You know, if you want to learn networking, I don't know what everyone's complaining about. You just head to eBay and pick up some used equipment. Like, it's not that big of a deal, is it? Huh. Maybe not. I don't know about that guy. Anyway, hey everybody, I'm Brian. Welcome back, and man, I love hardware. I do, but the price of buying it, of running it, and yeah, the noise and the heat can be kind of crazy. And that can feel like a huge barrier to entry, but you don't have to buy a bunch of gear to get started in networking. Chances are you can run virtual switches on the equipment you already own. If you do end up needing to build out crazy topologies, well, okay, maybe you do some upgrades. But the idea of a virtual switch is that in many cases, you can go grab an appliance from one vendor or another and run it in something like GNS3, an application that's free on your computer that lets you put a whole copy of the operating system to run and test things out. There's always a few things that don't work perfectly because the actual hardware is not there, but you can get started probably today with something like GNS3. Okay, so here's what we're going to be doing. We are going to set up a virtual appliance of Dell OS10 because it doesn't require a login. You can get to the website and it's pretty Cisco-ish, pretty Nexus-like. And we're going to be using that inside GNS3, and we're going to be using VMware Workstation Pro 25H2 to help us out. All right, well, let's see here. Where's my button? Tiny Brian! Well, kinda. Anyway, let's just real quick talk about what the heck this thing is. So, GNS3 is a program. It's free. Anybody can go get it. They do make you create an account. But when you've got whatever your computer is, there you go. Hey, giant 1980s looking computer, right? And on that computer, you install GNS3. That program is going to give you an interface that lets you spin up multiple instances of virtual switches, cable them up to each other, potentially even cable them up to other virtual machines that you've built out to be able to test things. Love it. Okay, but GNS3, that application is your interface. It itself needs additional components to work, though. So you also need some kind of hypervisor. Again, like we said, we're going to be using VMware Workstation Pro. And going new here, 25H2 just very recently came out. And one of the odd things that happened in the last little while is VMware Workstation 17, and now the latest version just recently came out, 25H2. They're free instead of costing multiple hundreds of dollars. So, yay! You do have to go make an account with VMware Broadcom to be able to get access to it. But yeah, you should be able to go download latest version of VMware Workstation or Fusion if you're on a Mac. Okay, and how does this fit into things? Well, Hypervisor is some application that lets you host virtual machines. And GNS3, the interface, is this application we're going to be using to manage to set up and build out our little virtual networks. But when you're going to be using some sort of virtual appliances like we're going to get into, these switches, you need, strangely, a GNS3 VM. Yeah, so inside of VMware Workstation, you're going to set up a virtual machine that's not a switch. Instead, it's a GNS3 VM. And that's what's going to host all of your virtual switches. It's nested virtualization. I'm not on the team or anything for them, obviously, right? But near as I can tell, the idea is this allows GNS3 to be able to handle virtual machines the same way, whether you're installing it on Linux or Windows or Mac OS. It's actually always those virtual switches, in this case, running inside a Linux virtual machine. All right, y'all, let's jump into it. Okay, so here we are on VMware's website. I've already signed in. Head over to VMware Workstation Pro, 25H2, and we're going to download that. Got to have created our account first. Got to agree to the terms and conditions. Go. Yes, we're looking at them. There they are. Reading. Yes. All right. Yep. Agreeing yet again. And here I had to give them my address and third born, I don't know, puppy. And finally a download link. All right, the reason we're grabbing our VMware first is because before we, gosh, I'm trying to think of the whole thing. Basically, before we get GNS3 fully installed, we want to have the GNS3 VM already ready to go. All right, heading over to GNS3's website. Like I said, you're going to need a login on this one as well. Yeah, check it out, right? Login. There we go. Logged in off screen there real quick. And now we can grab that. So here's where you grab your Windows, Mac, or Linux. And this is that interface that's going to let you control things, set things up, but not the actual VM. So just down here, yeah, there's the VM. And like we said, we're going to be using VMware Workstation on this one, and same download for that or Fusion. But if you're into VirtualBox, if you're into Hyper-V, if you want to use VMware ESXi, whichever option you want, just make sure you get the right one for you. Okay, cool. Got it downloaded. Just gonna unzip. I'm running this on a clean install of Windows 11 just to be able to give you kind of a fresh look. Okay. So what we unzipped just there was that GNS3 VM. Now we're going to go install VMware Workstation. Yes. Next. Reading fast. Oh, yeah. Obviously, change the install location if you like. Uncheck the join customer experience, but hey, stick with what's best for you. As this part of the install took quite a while, I've gone ahead and sped it up 8 times speed for this little stretch. Nearly there. And now we're going to go ahead and reboot. Going fast forward again here. Be right back in. There we go. Just getting right back where we left off. Yeah, there's our VMware Workstation Pro. After the reboot, everything should be sorted out with it. Excellent. No VMs yet, obviously, right? But I think we got one queued up here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this GNS3 VM, and at this point, because it's all registered with the application, we can just double click on it. I personally always rename it. You can leave it GNS3 VM, but there's a new version of this for every version of GNS3, which is to say when you update, you want an updated version of this as well. So I like to name it the version number of the GNS3 appliance. Okay, importing. Once we get this up, we're going to need to tweak things just a little bit, and here's why. This VM is where all of our virtual switches are going to live. And check it out. We can see by default, it's not exactly beefy, right? 2 gigs memory, 1 CPU. That's not near enough. So my setup here, this system has 64 gigs of RAM. I started out thinking 32 gigs, but hey, let's go big, 48 gigs of RAM. This is overkill. This is not necessary. Okay. For my CPU here, setting it to 2 processors, 4 threads each, basically like a dual core, or my mind has gone, a 6 core system. We also need to make sure we enable the virtualization. Okay, excellent. Now we're not gonna start this yet, but we've got it all queued up and ready to go. And now what we're going to do is go install that GNS3 application. Why, yes, UAC, I do want to install it. Default location's fine, default name's fine. Okay, expand out the tools here, and everything by default's probably fine. Notice that NP cap there. We don't need the WinP cap, that's an older thing. But basically, Wireshark is by default going to get installed along with this. That solar putty that's there, that's also going to be a really useful tool for looking at our command line of our switch. Okay, so kicking off the installer. This is actually real time here, so far anyway. Okay, NP cap, that's going to be a subset of Wireshark effectively for capturing, because yeah, you could set up captures on the virtual switches and the links between them. Just going to let this ride at normal speed. Once that NP cap's done, it's going to go pretty fast. Okay, come back over to the main GNS3 installer. Notice it's downloading Wireshark. Now, often this won't actually be the latest version of Wireshark, but you could totally go install the latest version after the fact. It's not like GNS3 relies on a particular one. All right, let's fast forward again. All right, license agreement. Absolutely, definitely for real email addresses going in here. And about here is when it loads up their website. Basically just taking you back to their homepage even though you just installed. Okay, and now important stuff. So we want to run the appliance in a virtual machine. Like, it's easy to forget that, but that's the whole reason we were setting stuff up before. Here's just setting a default location for where to find that. Okay, and it comes up and it wants, it assumes that the VM is going to be called GNS3 VM, but tell it refresh, and we can just pick what we named it, our GNS3 VM 2.2. whatever. All right, even though we've updated the VM itself, we need to tell GNS3 about the amount of RAM and CPUs we set up. So here, because like the exact amount of megabytes, we're just gonna go check and copy and paste that. All right, it's gonna take a moment. Tell it not to pop up this warning every time, otherwise it'll be annoying for you. And it, I should say GNS3, its interface is now loading up. It's starting up that GNS3 VM that's going to use for the back end. Let's see here, just kind of rearranging a little. I'll get there in just a second. Oh, those couple of red errors we see there, that's just from for a moment it was having trouble starting up. Okay, and here's the virtual monitor essentially for that GNS3 VM we spent all this time on. And you can tell it okay or not, doesn't really matter. It'll be fine. Tell it finish. Yeah, it's fine. It's just when I couldn't find the default name. Okay, and here we've gone to Edit and Preferences and GNS3 VM, and this is that VM we just told it about, basically. We can also come down here to this QEMU VMs. That's going to be our virtual appliances sitting inside of our GNS3 VM. Okay, so let's go grab an appliance. Certainly not the only one out there, but hey, this Dell OS10 download, if you search for that no space between the OS and the numeral 10, doesn't require a login or anything. We can head out here and grab the latest GNS3 bundle. Looks like 10.6.1.0, pretty darn recent. If that doesn't come up with a download right away, you might have to refresh the page. I've run into that from time to time. Okay, it's downloading now, moving right along. And while it's doing that, we can head over to Manuals and Documents and check it out. Here's the user guide. Okay, online only version. I kind of prefer the PDF and then to be able to like download that as well so you got it offline, right? Don't necessarily, to my mind, have to have internet access to get to explore here. And just kind of looking through, right, we can see previous versions of user guides if you need a particular previous one, and also a handful of white papers and other just useful things. Oh, and release notes. Always worth reading release notes to see what's been fixed or changed. Okay, let's go get that. Should be downloaded now. We're going to need to just unzip it. There it is. Take just a moment. Just leave it in the same default file, or pardon me, folder name. You can change it if you want, but it doesn't matter. Okay, and check it out here. Well, let's see if we can make things a little bigger so it's easier to see, but this is what we've just unzipped. So we've got a ton of different virtual switches here, that N3248TE, those S5200Z whatevers, right? And looking at the size of them, none of them are terribly big, but there's that one file up there that's, looks like on this version, almost 700 megabytes. Okay, and what we're doing is, over in GNS3, we're going to start up one of those appliances. We're importing it. And the only option here is to install with the VM. Default's fine here. It's going to take a second. And right here, this is where if you grab a virtual appliance from elsewhere, you might run into trouble, where you've got the appliance but not the disk for it or the installer for it. Here we're good. Okay, what it's doing now is it's copying all the files, our appliance plus that install disk basically, over to that GNS3 VM. It'll sit here for a moment, but yeah, it's literally copying it from your host computer to that GNS3 virtual machine and setting things up in there. This always takes longer than I'd expect, so hey, we're going to fast forward again. Okay, and now we are successful. Until it finished, tells it was installed and gives the full name there. It's just the same name we saw from our file. And hey, now we click over here on the left, this icon for routers, and there we go. Dell OS10 S5224, right, the one that we picked out. Okay, a little bit that we might want to play with. So I right-clicked and went to configure, and the defaults are okay, especially if you're not doing anything crazy. But if you happen to have a fairly powerful system, right, like you might want to increase the RAM, right? And this, though, is literally why we gave that GNS3 VM so much RAM, or as much as possible, because this default here is for 4 gigs of RAM and 1 thread virtual CPU. dedicated to this one switch, and you're gonna want more than one. Again, though, like, if you got 16, 32 gigs, something like that of RAM on your system, you should be fine for a couple, no problem by default. But if you happen to have the extra bandwidth, it's nice to be able to go in and give it, say, 8 gigs of RAM and 2 virtual CPUs for one of these. Okay, next thing, over on this network tab, it says that there are 10 adapters, but it's an S5224. That 24 means there's 24 ports, or main ports of 25 gig on this pretend switch we got here. But with only 10 adapters, that's going to give us 9 ports plus our management port. Right, we can see that here. There's management, and first user port starts with ETH111. Okay, so it's perfectly fine to leave it at 10, but so if you did want to increase the number, like I'm going to go ahead and change it up here to 25, that's going to give me 24 user ports plus the management port. And it's just more ports I can plug stuff into. Okay, and again, I right click and change the settings here. We can also go back to edit and preferences. And we've got our GNS3 VM showing up here, but if we go back down to that QEMU VMs, we have one now. And it's this S5224 we just put in. And here's those exact same settings. So it's fine. You can do it from here or just from the list over there. The main reason you might ever want to do it here is because you can like copy this. You can see different virtual appliances you got set up. Okay, so we're going to make a new project. You can name it whatever we want here. I'm going to go ahead and call this one OS10-test. Seems happy. Got green up in the top right there. And now I can just drag this this pretend switch in, and I can drag another one in. Okay, and by default, they're just going to be the whole big long name -1, Dell OS10, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to change it down to S5224-1. Leaf, spine, whatever makes sense to you. Here we go, S5224-2. Okay, and now these VMs are set up. They're here. We can kind of rearrange them, make our topology, but we can start them up. And we can right-click and tell it to start, or up at the top we can click on that play button, and that's going to tell it to start all the virtual appliances or whatever in here. And that's going to be running on that VM, but like there's no easy way to see the performance of that VM directly from that VMware workstation. But check it out. Over here, we can see there's that same GNS3 VM. And if I just move this over, yeah, check it out. I can see those 2 switches are running on it and the current CPU utilization and RAM of that device. Just above it there, that desktop Brian, whatever, that's for the host computer itself as well. Excellent. So like that can give you a clue if you're like overburdening it. Okay, so just double click on the switches and it's going to pull up the command line for them. It's basically a virtual serial interface. And this is that alternate version of PuTTY that got installed along the way for us as well. Solar PuTTY, I think. Okay, and check it out. Attempting. What we're looking at right here is that virtual switch installing its operating system. So if you've ever seen ONI before, that's exactly what's happening here. The open network installation environment's being used to install, in this case, OS10 on that virtual switch. And the same thing's happening on both of them. And this just goes back to, like we said before, hey, look, there's that one big file that's the install disk. And all the appliances are like, what's that, like about a megabyte each? And this is why, right? Like instead of all of them being like 700, 800 megabytes, there's the one install file. And so every time you make a new instance of one of these switches, you do have to sit and wait for it to install. But once you've installed it, you can close and reopen your project. And like the switches will stay the way you left them, assuming you save your config and everything. The OS will stay installed if you don't, but just so you can have it fully set up. Okay, this will sit here for a while. When I was capturing, I went ahead and just stopped and started again, so we'll see that in a second. But yeah, you'll see it installing on primary volume, and then I I think like copying to secondary partition, something like that. And then once it's done, it'll go ahead and boot up. Okay, and here we go. It's booted up. I've just scrolled up a little bit here. We can see it's grub because this is totally Linux under the hood. Default credentials, admin, admin. On a real switch, it would force you to change the password on first boot. They've got these set up so that it'll just let you stick with admin, admin if you want. We did a show system on there, doing a show system over here just to show that it's up and running, and we've got our version. There we go, show system, pipe no more, so we don't have to hit space. Yeah, S5224. Uptime, not very long. And here's our two switches. Okay, so last little parts to look at here. So if we head up to view, we've got some options. We can do our snap to grid. Snap to grid will let you make it a lot easier to line things up. At first they don't do anything, but as soon as you start to move them, it'll basically like drop into little slots. Okay, also the names, you can grab those and move them around as well. Yeah. Okay, over here on the left, we've got other options. Our router, right? And that's where we're hanging out. That's the router symbol. And that's where this OS10 switch shows up. In that left and right arrow there, the classic symbol for a switch, there's some default things in here as well, including this Ethernet switch. That is basically a little unmanaged switch. So in this case, check it out. We can plug in our management ports, on these switches to that little unmanaged one. And this could be useful for some communication between them, depending on what you're doing. Something like VPC for virtual port channel or MLAG kind of thing could be really useful there. Okay, in this case, check it out though. We're also adding in this VPCS, not a virtual port channel, but a little tiny pretend computer. This is built into Wireshark's super cut down little computer, just useful as a host to be able to like send some basic traffic. Find back a little bit. There we go, just moving the name down. And we can cable those up as well. And in this case, plug them into some of the user ports in there, like ETH1. Get ETH1 plugged in on both those. Okay, or 111. Okay, and then the little virtual computers are still powered off. We can see the red dot there to show us it's not plugged in. Okay, so we've got our command line for our S5224s, and we're just trying to arrange so we can see everything here. Oh, but there's a great opportunity. Check it out. So like our whole little diagram's not showing up, but view and fit in view is what we picked there, and suddenly it's just zoomed in and made sure we can see everything. Okay, so on those little virtual PCs, we can right-click and tell it to start. Or up at the top, we could, hit the play button again, tell it to start everything. When we double-click on these, it's going to bring up the command line for them. See a little PC1, PC2, whatever they were named. They show up as in here. Okay, and it says, hey, question mark for help. And check it out. We've got a bunch of things, but ARP, real useful. We've got IP. We've got, what else? Save. We've got show. Okay, these are going to be really useful. So IP, almost certainly we want to use to set an IP address on this thing. And that way we can try and use that ping command, for instance, to send a little traffic between the devices. Okay, so we've got the switches, the little pretend host connected up to the switches. What we're doing now is we're cabling up with that little cable icon there, right? And we're connecting the switches to each other. Port 25 on each of them up to each other. Now, this operating system for these switches just happened to have all ports no shut by default and on VLAN 1, so shouldn't need to configure anything necessarily. We're going to go set our IP address here and give us the example there, IP, and then whatever address / and that's the network the net mask there, and then default gateway. You don't have to have one, but we'll just go ahead and assign something here. So I gave this first one 10.0.0.10/24, and it confirms for us. And if we do show IP, it's going to also confirm for us and also give us our MAC. Okay, so let's head over to PC2, IP 10.0020/24, 10.0.0.1 for not actually using default gateway, but why not? Confirms for us. We'll give our show IP again. Yep, there's our IP done and our MAC address there. And now we should be able to ping back over to the other one. 10.0.0.10 was our PC1. Boom. And check it out. This is actually sending an ICMP message up out of its pretend NIC through that switch that's forwarding the traffic over to the other switch and then on down the way. ARP, if you just type ARP, it's going to list the ARP table on this little PC2. And we can see that there's some MAC address that ends with that, what is it, 6800, and it's address 10.0.0.10. Yeah. Okay, so if we head back over to PC1 and our show command from before, we can just compare. And 0050, 79, 66, 68, 00. Yep, same MAC. Right, the magic's working. And back on PC1, because we ping, they both had to have ARPed and to find each other's information. We see over here it's at 68.01 or :01 is the ending for the MAC. And yep, that's our MAC over here, right? The magic is working. Okay, last little thing. These little PCs, if you reboot them, if you like close and restart this session, they will have lost their configuration. So check it out here. I'm going to reload PC2. Oh, it didn't take the first time. There we go. And I'm going to have to tell it to reconnect in here. And when it comes back up, it will have lost its IP address. There we go. Show IP, none. That's no good. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and set our IP again. Set 10.0.0.20/24 for the network mask. 10.0.0.1 was our imaginary gateway. Cool. Show IP, just double confirm. Okay, we should be able to ping back to 10.0.0.10 again because we didn't reboot it. Yup, that's good. All right. And if we want to have that survive, we can just use a command we saw from before, save. Now, it says here save in some file name. Yeah, if you just type save, it'll save to the default location. And now if we reload it again, we should see that it keeps its IP. Connect. Checking, hey, there we go, checking for duplicate IP. Awesome, and now we just ping again to test and save on both of these. Whew. You made it. You did the whole thing. You have got a couple of virtual switches installed on your system, and hopefully you didn't have to buy anything extra, do any extra work. You're just there. All right, everybody, this has been a blast. Thank you so much. See y'all next time. So, did you hear they're replacing the cafeteria workers with AI? Yeah, I bet the price of chips is going to go through the roof.